Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, another week, and we're talking about a 3-0 defeat in a London derby. This one's a bit different though. There's a bit more to it. There's a bit more kind of layers that we can unpeel and look underneath, and hopefully that'll give us something a little bit different to discuss. Bear with me. It's not all misery. I think the last one was a bit more ranty from me. This one, there's a little bit extra to it. First off, my weekly apology. I know people always mock that I like to apologise for stuff. You may realise that maybe that my voice is slightly, maybe an octave lower, sound a bit more Barry White-like. That's because I've got a lurgy that my daughter has brought into the house from school. Not the lurgy that people are getting right now. Although I must admit, was a little bit worried in Ren because, we knew she'd had it and her friends had it and everyone had tested negative and everything. But obviously when I got it out in Ren, it kind of presented itself out there. There's still that little concern, even though it's not really the symptoms that you get with COVID and everything. But it was one moment in particular. After the match in Ren, I raced downstairs because I saw Nuno was really quickly doing his post-match stuff. Actually, it was Jonathan Veal that noticed it from PA. So we raced downstairs to see him. He was literally about to come into the press conference, and we were the only two English journos in there. All the rest were French. The other English journos hadn't even realised. And in my rush, I kind of put my phone onto the table, which is rare for us now. We're not used to kind of being back to physical press conferences and being able to do that. However, there is still a little cordon up where you're not really supposed to go by. So I quickly put my phone, my work phone, which I record interviews and press conferences on, I put it on the table. And I wasn't to know that the table was essentially like an ice rink. And my phone went zooming across the table and just flew off it straight like in front of Nuno Espirito Santo, who looked at me as if to go like, "What are you doing?" kind of thing. And it wasn't the greatest moment I've ever had in my life. And then we both had that really awkward moment where I couldn't cross over this kind of little barrier thing that was up because I'm going into then the red zone, which is the COVID, not the COVID, their bubble, as it were. And then he kind of clearly thought, well, I want to be polite and pick up Alistair's phone that's on the floor. Personally, I was just willing to just let it sit there and hopefully it might have picked up from the floor whatever was being said. But he did very kindly pick it up and just he said, "Where would you like us?" Just on the table would be great. But then, from then on, I just had that scary thing of, oh my God, what if what I've got right now is actually the thing? And Nuno has just touched my phone. Oh my God, kind of thing. Can you imagine if I was the person responsible for wiping Nuno out of whatever 10 days worth or however long, and depending on what it was. But thankfully, everything's all negative. I had to have many tests. That's with going to Rennes, the tests galore. So yes, no, I've had many tests. No, it's not that, thankfully, and I was even joking with some people at Spurs yesterday at the match before it started that, oh my God, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do because we have to do, if you're not aware, if you're not from the UK, you have to do a day 2 test currently when you come back from a country. So I had my day 2 test I'd had to do not being negative. It's been such a mess. Just that's the way the world is now, isn't it? The simple thing of picking up someone's phone they dropped can potentially become this big drama. But anyway, as much as I'd love to talk about Nuno picking up phones, because quite frankly, I don't want to talk about especially the second half yesterday, we must. So yes, it was the old cliched game of two halves. It really was. It really, really, really was. Obviously, incredibly sad day in terms of in the morning we obviously found out that Jimmy Greaves had passed away. One of the greatest footballers, the UK has ever produced, and for Tottenham, an utter legend. Top goal scorer in the club's history. Just a phenomenal striker. obviously, I'm not old enough to have kind of seen him in the flesh, but I've seen so much footage of him as a kind of a striker myself of a far lower standard. When I was younger, I used to kind of really look at all the old stuff about Spurs strikers and watch all the old footage that was available. And, what a player. What a player. I saw some people talking about, someone, I can't remember, one of the radio channels yesterday saying that, it's very, it's difficult not to, it's quite easy, sorry, to go back and look at his figures and what he did and kind of see there was a little bit of a Messi Ronaldo figures in the way Jimmy Greaves was. He was that prolific. He's a ridiculously good player. And then obviously, it's just been really tough for him in recent years. Obviously the stroke and it hasn't been a good time. And obviously, so sadly, we had what, him passing away. But I think because of his legacy at Tottenham and what a massive impact he made on the club, I think you then saw what we got on Sunday, which was a club, especially in the first half, and I'm talking about the whole club. I'm talking about the fans and even the staff and everything, just fired up with this kind of emotion. I mean, on the pitch, when we had the minute's applause, there was Martin Chivers, Steve Perryman, Mickey Hazard, Paul Allen, Ozzy Ardiles, Gary Mabbott, Ledley King, Michael Dawson, of course Graham Roberts, Glenn Hoddle. All of these players of yesteryear. Just remembering what an absolute amazing striker he was, that really is the striker that I think a lot of not only Tottenham strikers but Premier League strikers really should strive to be like. It was incredible. Not only a poacher, but could do so much more kind of outside the area as well as inside it. Terrific player. But yeah, I think there was that real swell of emotion and passion, and I think it added, the noise, especially, I'd say, maybe the first 20 minutes or so, the after effect of that just was so loud. It really was. It was a cracking atmosphere to begin with. And, I felt Nuno Espirito Santo's team selection was one that I felt also fired up the crowd. I was aware of it a little while before kickoff. I'm not one of these types that you'll see me tweeting out like, I understand, blah blah is starting and all this. I'll try not to anyway, because there's a part of me that I don't know. I don't like to give the other team that little nod if they weren't aware before the match. Maybe it's the Spurs fan in me from, as in growing up as a Spurs fan. Maybe there's that element to it. I don't know. I feel that news has to be worthy for me, and I don't know what is gained by that, if you see what I mean. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. But anyway, so the team itself, as you saw, it was one that I felt would really fire up the fans as well. You've got Ondembele in there, you've got Lo Celso in there, you've got Son back up front with Kane, and with Dele as well. It was quite, it was only Højbjerg was the only defensive player really, other than the defence. And I felt that with all the claims of, negative football, defensive football, whatever, I felt that the team lineup as well played its part in that first half. And I thought Spurs did well. Tuchel admitted afterwards that, he felt he was absolutely furious with the first 45 minutes. He felt Spurs won all the duels, won a lot of the battles. And I think it's something he said, so like Chelsea just tried to look the most skillful team rather than the actual team that would win the match. And I think, Spurs had the chances. Lo Celso had a couple of early half chances. He just needs to get a better connection on. Reguilon. When Reguilon ran down that left, and it reminded me hugely of that moment. Remember when Sissoko ran through Anfield and Van Dijk decided, look, I'm going to cover Son. I'm just going to let Sissoko go because I think Sissoko is more likely to miss the shot. And it kind of felt like that. Reguilon ran through, and I can't remember who the defender was now. Whether it was Rudiger or Christensen, maybe. Might have been Christensen. But they had, I can't remember, had Lo Celso on the other side. And it was almost like they felt, well, we'll just give Reguilon the entire kind of room to do what he wants, because if he passes to Lo Celso, there's more of a threat there. And I just felt weirdly Reguilon played into their hands, and it was like, I'm just thinking, run in there, and just put it across the keeper into the far corner. That's your goal. And instead, he tried the low ball to Lo Celso, which was cut out, and it was very frustrating. And then you had Son, and you had Son's little put through by, I'm trying to remember if it was Kane, it might have been Lo Celso actually. I think it was Lo Celso, played him through, and unfortunately, Kepa came out to block it at his feet. So Spurs did have their chances. It's kind of been slightly changed the narrative because of the defeat, the result that Spurs didn't create anything either in the first half. They did. There were chances that probably fell to, especially the Reguilon fell, and maybe the Lo Celso ones early on, maybe just fell to the wrong people. So yeah, they were doing the right things. I remember writing at half time, I have to do a little, for our match blog that we have, I have to do a little, my thoughts on the first half. And I remember my first line was, that was exactly the kind of half Tottenham needed. After the Palace game and the Rennes game, which was a bit iffy, they needed that first half to show that they're there and they're ready to play in a big match. And yes, of course, it needed a goal. But other than that, a lot of what they were doing was good. The defending was pretty good on the whole. And I felt Emerson had been a positive in the first half, as had the other defenders, but we'll come to them in a little mo. And I just felt, yeah, it was right. Now it was the time to build on it. But unfortunately, there was no building. And that was where it all just kind of went to pot. Fitness-wise, you could tell it was a team with, we got Son and Dyer both hadn't even had a full training session before the game. Lo Celso and Romero both haven't played any football. Romero had that 5 minutes. He's had 5 minutes in about 3 weeks. We're not going to get into that rant again. And so obviously that's almost half your team. Well, 4 players. And you've got a subpar Harry Kane right now who doesn't look sharp either. You've got Tongi who's just playing Tongi and Nabella who's just playing his second game of the season, and he tired instantly. And I just think, a lot of people have made a point, and which is fair to a degree, of or the Kante sub changed the game. I would say it was more the fact that Spurs then couldn't change it almost. I've seen Nuno getting a fair bit of flack. And I do think there are things that aren't going well in what Nuno's doing. But I would say yesterday, I wouldn't massively say there was too much that was his fault yesterday. And I know there's some people going to be going, oh my God, what are you talking about? But I look at it, and just the key for me is, look, Chelsea were able to bring on Kante and Werner, 2 of their biggest signings of recent years, big players. Nuno turned to his bench, and essentially he had a 20-year-old in Brian Hill and 21-year-old in Oliver Skip. He's only just turned 21 on Thursday. And it was all, just for me, that just sums up the difference between Tottenham and Chelsea. It brought back so many memories of the, I don't know if you remember the FA Cup semi-final when Spurs played Chelsea at Wembley, and I don't know whether that was the Son at left wing back one or not, or whether that was a Man U game. But anyway, that day, Chelsea brought off their bench Eden Hazard, Cesc Fabregas, and Diego Costa. Tottenham brought on Georges Kevin Nkudu, and then Poch looked at the bench and was like, I don't even really want to bring on Vincent Janssen. And he brought on Kyle Walker as an attacking threat. And just this yesterday was just another example of that. It was like, you could argue it's an indictment of the transfer policy. You could say that it's purely because Lucas and Bergwijn were injured. Or you could just say it's because of the vast financial differences in the two clubs, Just Chelsea seem to have rich options, rich in both sense of the word, options to be able to bring off the bench to change games. Whereas Spurs, as soon as the team tired, that was kind of it. Yes, you could say Skip. I thought Skip actually, he started off with, I think it was a couple of ropey passes, but actually, as the game wore on, made some really big kind of sliding tackles that were quite good. But he'll try to drive the play a little bit like Lucas does with those runs, but I think the game was kind of already done by that point. But, Nuno should be expecting that his players can last at least more than the time they did before they started to really flag. And this I think is my huge thing with Nuno right now, where I feel people are being a little bit unfair with him. We're seeing Nuno out, and we're seeing the knives out for him after 5 Premier League games. He said something yesterday which didn't really click with me until a little while after. I asked him about... what did I ask him about? I asked him a few things, but one of the things I did ask him about was about how... this lack of creativity. Is it down to a lack of rhythm, a lack of coordination between the players? What exactly did he feel it is? And he said, yeah, it's those things. He said, I also feel it's just a lack of time. And in the moment, I kind of just thought to myself, he just means because we're just early in the season. And I went away and I thought about it. I kind of realised what he probably actually meant. And that's that Nuno's just had, in actuality, 2 to 3 weeks with his full squad. That's it. You look at pre-season, the bulk of the players that he had in pre-season, all the kind of big-name international players didn't come back until the last fortnight, and some of them until the last week of pre-season. You had the Kane and Ndombele sagas of them both wanting to leave and not being involved really at all early on. But yet, in those early weeks before the international break, when he got some time to work with the squad, Spurs had 3 wins in the Premier League, top of the table, got through to the Europa Conference League group stages. Then the international break happened, as we're well aware. Spurs lost the 3 South American players who all probably would have been starting games, I'd imagine, since. If not, one, if not both of them. Lost all 3 of those to isolation in Croatia. Then proceeded to lose, I think it was 4 or 5 players during the international break. Then he lost Dyer just after it to injury. Then he lost Lucas and Bergwijn on Thursday night as well to injury. All of that, as I said, with Kane, who is clearly not fit or sharp yet. But sorry, Kane aside, because that's not really the point I'm making. The point is actual on the training ground, the players he's got to work with. I know very few managers will ever be able to work with their full squad. But I just feel like Nuno has lost a chunk of his key players, pretty much for the bulk of his time as Tottenham head coach so far. And I think that's huge in terms of Nuno is a lot of his football is based on high fitness levels, pressing, things like that. Excuse me. And I just think you haven't seen a fit team yet. You haven't seen the fit team able to carry that out. The pressing was good against Chelsea in the first probably half hour, maybe even the first half. Even Kane was pressing quite well. Son was up there and doing well. And then I just thought, you just saw as the second half hit, Son obviously just come back from an injury, looked flagging fitness-wise. Kane definitely isn't there. We'll come to him in a bit. Ndombele, yes, the same. Lo Celso, the same. And we're looking at a lot of players who, through not really the fault of Nuno, are totally not ready for his football yet. Which is huge, really, because it's part and parcel of everything he does, really. And I'm not going to go too much into this because I did say it last week, but I will hark back to Poch. As I said last week, Spurs were pretty rubbish until at least November. The results were terrible. They were, honestly, look at some of the results. They were dreadful. And again, maybe a similar situation that he wanted to bring this physical, much fitter style to Tottenham that relied on it. And obviously he also needed to find his team, to find the combinations, to find the players that worked with his kind of football. I know all of this. People, they go, it's the manager's not adaptable. Manager can't change. It's like, sorry, Poch didn't come in and say, I'm going to change the way Tottenham play. Tottenham became Pochettino's Tottenham. And I think that's what Nuno wants to do as well. And it's the same with Mourinho. Mourinho didn't want to create a Tottenham that just happened to be managed by Mourinho. He wanted to create Mourinho's Tottenham. So yeah, and I'm trying to think. I think even in that Poch year, I don't think they had an international summer. Was it 2014? Actually, maybe they did. Strike that. Maybe they did. So maybe there you go. Maybe there's the similarity. Maybe him not having those players early on. He certainly didn't have the international break issues where South American players were having a quarantine afterwards. But yeah, I just feel, look, the football isn't great. I'm going to come to that. The football isn't, despite the fact that I saw positives in the first half, what we saw in the second half, and what we saw in Rennes for a while as well, and at Palace as well, yes, the football has to improve. But I just don't see how you can ask someone to transform a club and make them what you want them to be, because Spurs don't need a tweak. They don't. Spurs don't. Sometimes I think I tell myself they just need a tweak. They don't. They need an overhaul. Of course they do. We've seen the players that have gone out the door this summer. We've seen what needs to be done. It's going to take time. And if we're just going to decide after 5 matches in the Premier League, 3 of those won, 2 of those not, oh yeah, he's done. Nuno out. It's just you kind of end up giving up hope on football. And I know it's the modern way, and I know we all get frustrated and everything, and I know it's very easy to get dispirited about your team and frustrated, and it may well be that the frustrations do come from higher up. Should come from higher up at the club. I don't know, or towards higher up at the club. I don't know, but. I don't, you know what I'm like. You know the way I write and the way I speak in these things. I've seen the very, very depths of football and then the tough stuff that happens when I used to report on my non-league days in League Two, and then the bad things that happen in a club. And I feel like maybe the Premier League, we lose all sense of context and also patience and time and understanding. We see other clubs that someone like a Tuchel can go into Chelsea, have vast resources and can quickly make an impact. Because then it is purely about coaching the very, very top players. And that's not what it's like at Tottenham, There's more... Tottenham, a team that, and we know it, they buy potential and promise more than ready-made. I'd say Christian Romero, who I'm going to come to in a bit, is probably the best example of someone that straddles both worlds. And I do think we're going to see some really good stuff from him. He was one of my positives from yesterday. But even someone like Tongi Ndombele, the club's record signing, 60 million plus, he's still a player that is all about what he can be than rather what he is, which says it all about Tottenham and the way they kind of operate and stuff. And that's rightly or wrongly. Some people think it's a good model, some people absolutely hate it. But yeah, I just feel like with Nuno, I don't like the fact that the knives are out already. It's one of those where I wouldn't be shocked if we start seeing, stories of how, I don't know, players are bored with his training. All these cliched ones that come out when managers are under pressure. And, the fact that he should be under pressure after 5 matches, 3 of which he's won, it just kind of sums up where football's at now. Sorry, this is becoming really depressing and ranty. It's not. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. Right. But yeah. And also, I just say, I don't want another managerial search. I don't. Please don't give that to me. The last one was rubbish, and it went on for ages. And even at the end of it, the fans, a lot of them weren't happy with what they got. So, I'm sure there's some fans still going, oh, Conte, get Conte, we need him. It's like, yes, I understand that actually, logically, to get Conte when he hasn't got the transfer window where he can break you, maybe is the best time to get Conte, and he is an incredible coach, and I understand that. But if you also can't see why Conte and Tottenham are a very, very difficult fit, and probably even more so than Mourinho and Tottenham were, then I don't know what else I can say, because I've spoken about that at length in previous videos. And again, that's not to do down Conte, an incredible coach, but he needs a lot of money, and that's where Inter Milan, just look at them now. And, I think the same was with Chelsea afterwards. They had to get rid of a lot of expensive buyers kind of thing. And that's Chelsea. So, yeah, yeah, can we just give Nuno a little bit of time? But the football isn't helping. I've got to have to say that. Yes, you could look at the league table and say they're seventh, and they're just 4 points off the top. I know it's exciting when Spurs were top of the table and all that, but it is still a fledgling table. It was then and it is still now. But I think the worrying thing that he knows he has to fix this. You look at the stats and, I saw some stats put out yesterday of when it comes to shots in the Premier League so far this season, Spurs are 19th. Goals scored 17th. Shots allowed at the other end 18th. Tackles won 19th. Possession 15th. And successful pressure 20th. And that one for me says everything about the fitness levels. And look, none of that is good. None of that is good at all. What I would say, and also, it doesn't scream the free-flowing, attacking and entertaining football that Daniel Levy promised the fans. Of course it doesn't. And he will be getting nervous, I'm sure, and a little bit twitchy because, I'm not going to go into the story too much, but essentially Paratici wanted Nuno and Daniel Levy had to be convinced. So he may now be worrying, what have I been sold here? However, honestly, I really can't stress enough how a manager needs a bit of time to work with his squad and actually get his imprint on it and stamp his authority on the team and mould it in his image. And I mean, what he's also been hampered with, he's had Harry Kane, I'd probably say at his worst. And I don't think Harry Kane himself would probably deny that. I don't think he's sharp yet. I don't think he's where he needs to be. I said this before, Harry Kane is not just a guy who doesn't requires service at all. He can create his own chances. He can create chances for other. He is your Eriksen and Kane in one kind of thing. And also Sonny. Sonny's not entirely up to speed yet. The injuries, obviously, yesterday you saw him really fade out of the game as well. Excuse me. So when you're losing what are not only two of the best attacking players in the Premier League, but are Tottenham's two biggest by a mile attacking outlets, then you can see what that would do to a team. When you're losing the strengths that they bring you, the amount of times Kane and Son, for example, bailed out Mourinho's team last year, in matches where really, Spurs, there's a lot of matches they either should have lost or drawn. But because of how fantastic Kane and Son are and their combinations and everything, they created magic. They created situations out of nothing, and the game scoreline was completely changed. I just don't think Nuno's benefited from that at all yet. We've seen a Kane that's just substandard, and he was again yesterday. And I think, I don't want to make too grand a statement. I just feel like on the day when we lost Jimmy Greaves, the top scorer in the club's history, and you've got Harry Kane, who is an incredible player, who is, just whatever it is, 41, something like that, goals behind him, and hopefully will one day overtake him. I don't know. I think there was just a part of me that maybe it's just romantically, emotionally wanted Kane to stand up on the day and show why he is, the heir apparent, the next Jimmy Greaves, and look, we know he is. I know we don't need to have him to prove it, but I just felt on that day of all days, it's probably just a soppy romantic notion, but I just kind of wanted him to step up, and I just think, almost in honour of the great Jimmy Greaves, and but it just didn't happen. He was very similar in Rennes and the same at Selhurst Park. It's almost a bit of a shadow version of Kane at the moment. And I've seen some people saying, "Oh, it's because he just wants to leave and he hasn't got his way." And I don't think Kane's like that. And I don't think even if he was, there's no point to that now. There's absolutely 0 point to it whatsoever. It's like, people tell me he's going to be here for this season at the very least. It's not like even there's I'm just going to rock on until January and get out of here. It's not that at all. He is focused back on Tottenham. I think it's fitness. I don't think he was at his peak fitness level last season, and I think he's now got to get back there because the best Harry Kane is the hustling, bustling Harry Kane. He came deep a little bit yesterday with Son going on, but I just didn't feel fitness-wise he had enough about him to still drive past players and do what he does. So yeah, and Nuno without Kane and Son on their top of their game, it's, yes, you could say transfer policy wise, that's where maybe you should have fixed it. You should have brought in another Ericsson type. You should have brought in another striker. Yeah, and you heard me have a little whinge about that at the end of the transfer window. But if you've lost them and you don't have Lucas and Bergwijn to turn to as well for that little bit of attacking thrust, then yeah, it makes things very difficult. And I just think time. Let's talk about some positives. I can't whinge. For the whole video. And this sounds so weird to make them the positives in a 3-0 defeat. But I'd actually say Christian Romero, Eric Dyer and Hugo Lloris were probably my 3 players of the match. And I know that sounds weird. And there were people out there, I gave them, all 3 of them, a 7 each in my ratings. And I even had to apologise in the rating, not apologise, but explain in the ratings, look, yeah, I know it's odd that they lost 3-0 and 3 of the defensive players I'm praising. But I just kind of felt that they were almost let down by others around them rather than by their own faults. I felt with Dyer, I thought he had another pretty good performance. He made an incredible block on his line from Alonso, I think it was. He was kind of like his hip stomach. He just threw himself back on. It was an incredible block. And he made a lot of big interceptions and stuff. There's still the odd little Dyer moment where he kind of doesn't really think about what he's doing. But I'd say on the whole, they were minimised. And no, I thought he played well. I thought Christian Romero was very accomplished in a lot of what he did. I thought he gave real glimpses of what we're going to get from Romero this season and why he was Serie A Defender of the Year. Between he and Dyer, if you're going to be perfectly honest, whatever you want to say about how Chelsea attacked, I wouldn't say Romelu Lukaku until those last few minutes really got much of a sniff. Lukaku will always hold the ball up well. Does this thing where he goes like does that. He flings his arms back like a starfish kind of thing. And it kind of, in one kind of aspect, essentially stops the defender getting around him, and the other, it gives him time to hold the ball. I think Dyer and Romero are both moaning to the ref about it a couple of times because it's a bit like, well, he's kind of catching us with his arms as well. It's not really a natural kind of shielding thing to do. And he will always hold up the ball very well. Excuse me. But I felt they didn't really give him much of a sniff until late on, when Spurs are kind of a bit in disarray, a bit like they were at Palace in the final 10 minutes as well. And it was the same with Romero. I think I said this before, with Inter Milan played Atalanta, and Lukaku didn't really get much out of Romero that day. So I felt, Romero, it was positive. There was a lot of times when he was very cool in possession, very calm, collected and composed. He just took the ball off someone and just kind of drifted around them and gave the ball to another Tottenham player. It was good. And I thought Lloris had a good game. He a little bit shaky towards the end at Palace, but I felt there was nothing he could do with the 3 goals, all of them in right bang in the corner. And he made a few kind of flying saves. There was one cross he came out where he got clattered and got like a cut shin. I thought he did well as well. Højbjerg, I felt, was really, really good first half, and second half maybe drifted a little bit from his performance. In terms of the other defensive players, Emerson again, I thought in the first half there was real moments of promise, and I remember turning that was to Jonathan Veal actually, and saying to him, look, I didn't say look. I remember saying that, touch wood, Emerson's had a really good first half. He's kind of really dealt well after a tough game against Zaha in his first game. But second half, I felt he started to struggle a little bit. It may be still a fitness thing with him as well, and it's fitting in with a new club and team. And Reguilon was the same. Reguilon had made some terrific block in the first half. Then he had that moment he really should have had a shot at goal. And I think second half he started to struggle really badly with Azpilicueta. He's got this thing that I think is a real thing he has to fix, Reguilon, where he gets beaten with headers at the back too much in the box, and it allows him to head the ball back across the box. And Azpilicueta is not a tall guy. We're not tall. You can't say, "Oh, Reguilon's a bit shorter, so he's getting beaten." It's an area of his game he needs to fix, I think, big time as a defender. But yeah, so in the defence, I just felt that those three key players in the middle just maybe weren't entirely protected by the rest. The goals were... Set piece was poor for Silva, as in the defending of it. Spurs seem to be using this zonal defending, which I'm not a huge fan of. There are some people that are big fans of it. For me, it does create scenarios like that, where Silva comes from deep, and he's obviously got the run then to leap, whereas the players are already in the zone, like, it was Dele and Dyer, I think, and they're kind of essentially jumping from a standing start, and they had no chance, really. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Second goal was just utter... Well, it was bad luck to a point. Lo Celso gave the ball away when he really didn't need to. But then the shot itself from Kante, there's not... Hits Dyer, spins in a strange scenario, and I think it was Guesty said, I was speaking to him earlier, he said, if you actually watch it, and I didn't see this replay, but apparently it looks like it's veering away from goal. And at the last minute, the spin actually takes it in, just slightly in, so it hits the post and goes in. So that was unlucky. Third goal was poor. Third goal was really, really poor. Trying to remember who it was switched off. I can't remember who it was. I remembered earlier. But essentially, Rudiger, he should not be able to just come out of the 6-yard box, have oceans of space to turn and shoot like that. Not in a million years. That's going to annoy me. I can't remember who it was. But, there were mistakes. It's one of those where, Nuno said after the game, look, we have to kind of hang on that first half, because the first half, a lot of stuff we did was good. A lot of stuff was where we want to go. And then second half, we just absolutely ran out of steam. We need to be more consistent. And I'd hope, if he can get the Spurs players to build on that first half and not repeat the second. I mean, even like Tanguy Ndombele in the first half did a lot of the things that I love to see Tanguy do. He did a lot of good stuff. He was trying to track back. He was knackered, but he was trying to track back as well. Yes, I know it's wrong that he should be knackered. I agree, completely agree. But he did a lot of good things, and he looked like he was going to make stuff happen. He was beating his man. He's the one guy who does make me make some strange noises in the press box. Which are really noises that probably shouldn't be heard. And all this sort of stuff. Because just the things he does are just wonderful. And I was really happy to see him get back-to-back starts. And, I'll be honest, I think he needs to keep starting him. Because I think if he can get Tanguy to where he was fitness-wise last season, I think they need him. I do. I really do think they do. I think Nuno needs him as well. Some people might disagree. And, don't get me wrong, he does stuff that annoys me as well. Like, second half, essentially Tonguy's asking to come off. He did the same in Rennes. Whether it's tiredness, whether it's because he feels like a slight pain or maybe an injury coming. I know, you or I... We'd love to be Premier League players. We'd be dragged off that pitch as the last resort to coming off a football match. We even saw Messi with PSG. One of the greatest players in the world has done everything. He's still desperate to stay on that pitch yesterday. And when Tanguy does stuff like that, it is a little bit like, oh, come on, man. And, of course, there'll be moments when his fitness means that he wasn't able to track back at times. And I remember, when he was at his real peak fitness last year, there were times when he was flying back into his own half late in games to make crunching tackles. I can't remember, there was one game that just stands out vividly. I can't remember if it was a European game or a Premier League game, but he absolutely flew back and did it. And I just feel like we're now in this situation where, with the Wolves game coming up, it's a bit like... Carabao Cup, do you now just play your starting 11 pretty much that you'd want in almost every game? Do you get them the fitness that comes through matches? Because clearly we're at a stage now where training time is going to be so little, because every week has got a midweek match in it. Then you've got another ridiculous international break coming up as well. So are you at the stage now where we're early in the season, so you're not going to burn them out at the moment? Do you just say, look, right, let's get the fitness up, let's get the rhythm, the coordination, the understanding of each other. It's just play every game. And it's very harsh on those on the fringes who are trying to impress. I get that. But do you just play the matches now and get them out there? And it will help that. Like Lo Celso's another example. Lo Celso came into that game off the back of, one training session with the squad on Saturday afternoon with Romero and Sanchez as well. And he started off, I thought, quite well. Little bright moments, trying to make things happen. Should have done better, I think, with some little early chances. And then he also tailed off, in terms of his fitness and sharpness. And I think he and Ondembele both came off at the same time, didn't they, for Hill and Skip? So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's where I'm at right now. I don't think they can use the tiredness excuse, say, if you play them Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday. He'll have to make a couple of changes. Of course he will. I know he will. Someone like, so let's say Galini, for example, it may have been promised to him that he plays and him in cup matches, and the likes of Roden, Joe Roden may have been told, look, don't worry, you're going to get game time in the cups and all that. But I don't know. Like I'm saying, if I'm saying that Nuno needs time working with his players, I think he needs to start them. I think we need to now have a strong team in every game, kind of thing. But yeah, Wolves and Arsenal. What a week. What a week after that. Big matches. Spurs need to keep their avenue of a potential trophy open. Wolves are going to be tough. They are going to... This, for them, obviously, is their best chance, of silverware, probably. And they're going to go for it. They'll have a strong team out. Adama Traore again. There's all of that. And they'll look to be keeping possession. This is the thing as well. It's like, in a week where Spurs fans will continue to, understandably, moan about the defensive aspect of performances, maybe, Spurs now have 2 games against teams that will want to and expect to boss possession. Wolves will look to have a lot of the ball. Arsenal will look to have a lot of the ball at the Emirates on Sunday. And Tottenham probably are going to have to play their counter-attacking way, which, even if they win, will be later revisited as a defensive performance if future performances are not as good. It's like, oh man, what 2 matches? And I mean, on Sunday as well with the Emirates, Spurs barely ever win there. They really don't. It's a game I really don't enjoy going to ever. I must admit, I always expect the worst. I think that's just drummed into me. I don't... press box wise, it's a strange one. You get absolutely loads of fans standing up in front of the press box. It's really difficult to see the game. That's purely on the media side of things. And yeah, I was just trying to think back to, obviously we had the win there with the Kabul header, but it's just not been a place that Spurs do particularly well at. So it's one of those where if he does lose, or if the performance is very much one of counter-attacking, trying to grab a point, or maybe all 3 points, then it'll be looked back on as, defensive Nuno. Whereas I don't think Spurs have ever gone there and not played that way, if you see what I mean. And the other aspect of it, of course, is that Arsenal in midweek play at AFC Wimbledon in the Carabao Cup, so will likely make probably 11 changes for that game. And they'll be ultra fresh for Sunday. Whereas obviously I'm saying, and I don't know whether Nuno will do it or not, but I'm saying go strong on the Wednesday night. Arsenal have picked up a little bit of form again, although you could say yes, but they've only won 1-0 against Norwich and 1-0 against Burnley. But as Guesty pointed out to me very clearly and obviously earlier, you'd still rather be going into a game with 2 1-0s under your belt rather than 2 3-0 defeats in the Premier League, and it is spot on. It absolutely is. So it's going to be a big week. I hope it's not deemed a defining week for Nuno. I really hope it's not. If you're seriously considering getting rid of a manager after 6 Premier League games, let's say, then I think that's more something's wrong with the football club, to be honest, which some people may think it is. But yeah, it's not good, but hopefully pin the hopes on that first half I just hope it wasn't just emotionally charged first half, and that there actually was more to it that they can take. They can get a good result on Wednesday night. They need something like that, I think, to take them into the derby. Derby is a strange one. I would say it can go either way, but they will also be under a lot of intimidating noise. The Arsenal fans are back for a North London derby, and certainly, while people do moan about Arsenal fans being quiet, all of this that you read and hear, my experiences of the North London derby at the Emirates is that's the time that they're not quiet. They certainly aren't, and they do create a very hostile atmosphere, and it's up to Tottenham to do something about that. Like I say, I think a lot of players need to step up. Nuno's got work to do, of course he has, but I don't think the players have done him any favours, and what worries me is that's something we've heard so many times, and I've said that so many times, how many managers that the players don't step up for. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Sorry, as you can tell, I'm a little bit croaky and my voice is going a little bit, so I probably will wrap it up there, which may be good for some people because you probably don't want to hear too much more miserable stuff about Tottenham right now. But yeah, all I'd say is try to give him a little bit more time before you write him off, Nuno. And I'm sure the comments will already be, as you're reading this watching this right now, I'm sure people will already be saying he's had enough time, blah blah blah. But personally, I don't think this is Nuno Espirito Santo's Tottenham Hotspur yet whatsoever. I think it's still the remnants of what has been, mixed with a lack of training time, a lack of fitness because of that as well. I think it's just a weird mishmash of a Tottenham Hotspur. I think it was Mourinho. Didn't Mourinho say in his first season that, even by January it was too early to kind of judge? He needed time to make his Tottenham. But we don't really, like I say, in football we don't really do time. There's not that, to be fair, there's not really that luxury of it because of the finances involved. But whoever comes in has to work with exactly the same constraints, as it were, and I think he deserves a bit of time, Nuno. And I hope there's not like pressure building after 2 Premier League defeats. I really hope there isn't. I hope we're better than that. But there you go. Right, I'm going to go off and blow my nose. I have a paracetamol, and I'll be heading to Molineux on Wednesday night, and then the Emirates on Sunday. And fingers crossed, next week we have more positive stuff to talk about, and we can look back on this week as the one where Nuno started to show his Tottenham team, and we started to see the likes of Kane step up and Son get fitter and be able to step up again, and Ndombele show what he can do if he's given a chance. This is the thing, Ndombele just wants to play, doesn't he? It's always this thing. He's been left out of the team by a few managers now. Mourinho, Mason, and Espirito Santo. So if he's going to get starts, and I think he's going to keep getting starts, show what you can do. Show what you can do and last longer in matches. My message to Tongi Ndombele. But yeah, so there you go. So fingers crossed we've got something a little bit more positive to talk about. I think there'll be some changes for us. I'll be interested to see what happens with Tanganga. I personally would probably play him at right back at the Emirates myself. That's not to say Emerson has been poor. I just think he's still adapting. And for me, I'd probably want that slight insurance of Tanganga being able to just step inside a little bit and just make that kind of solid back three in possession. But yeah, so there you go. Right, sorry, I am drifting. I'm clearly not entirely with it with this head cold. But yeah, I shall catch you next week. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall speak to you later. Goodbye.